What's up, guys, and welcome into the Work Wherever podcast. I am Roy Edwards, and today I am joined by a very special guest, one of my favorite guests on the previous podcast, so hopefully you guys are here turning in again, and this is April Dunham. She is the Power Platform Advocate at Microsoft and is kind of a big deal around the SharePoint Microsoft 365 environment. So, April, thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on again. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I know that, when I was talking about and thinking about ways that this podcast could go and how we could help people and we started this like right as COVID was going out. That was the original podcast. And it was like, how are businesses innovating to, combat life, basically. And so now we're at a very different position, similar as in that we're all still remote for the most part. There is the return to work environment, but businesses have they've been floating or hopefully doing more than that over the last 2 years, and now they've started to build processes. They've been starting to build applications, maybe pushing further into Microsoft 365's little Teams action became a pretty big thing over the last couple of years. So what are some of the trends that you've seen over the last couple of years? We'll start with COVID as the beginning, that you're starting to see that enterprise and small business starting to take to with this new remote environment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a ton has changed since COVID. I think if anything good came out of it, it's the fact that businesses are realizing that we don't have to go into the office to be productive and get stuff done. There's been several reports and studies released out there that I've read up on, and overwhelming kind of consensus is that people are actually more productive working remotely than they were working in offices. And I myself has worked remotely for about 8 years now. So I know that that's the case for me at least. So I think a lot of businesses are realizing that, hybrid work or remote work or, even 4-day work weeks and all these things are possible, and it's possible to be productive and even more productive while doing so.
Yeah. So I've been remote for, I don't know, a long time. Maybe not 8 years, but pretty close too. And it was prior to COVID, it was kind of looked like a luxury. Like, how'd you do that? How do you work from home? Don't you have so many distractions? And I never really saw it as a distraction. And to your point, those studies do show that members are more productive. They work longer hours. There's like prior to COVID, there was like the remote worker guilt, right? Where it was like, I'm working from home, so I have to be more productive so that my boss doesn't tell me that I have to go back into the office, kind of a thing. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So has your work from home changed at all pre-COVID, post-COVID? Like, is it been kind of business as usual, or how have you seen like your day-to-day interaction change?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been kind of business as usual. I guess the only thing that's changed is, I was used to working remote myself, but working with a lot of people that were in the office, right? And so, adjusting to, sticking to their work hour schedule now, since like pretty much everyone that I work with is also remote, I've seen, adjusting to the fluctuation of hours. I think that's the other beautiful thing about remote work is we're not having to stick to the typical, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday timeframe hours. I know Donna Sarkar, she's been experimenting with that as well, as like, kind of like flexible work hours and work when you're most productive. So that's been the biggest adjustment, I guess, is just making sure that you are respecting people's preferred working hours since we're working remotely. And then also, you mentioned where a lot of people are more productive and they're working more and being cognizant of, I don't have to work, like a 60-hour work week to prove myself that I can keep working remotely and thinking about that work-life balance.
Yeah, that's been I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've seen out of COVID or pandemic, whatever you want to call the last 2 years, is that organizations, not all organizations yet, hopefully they all do get there, but organizations have been more aware of the stress and the mental health of their employees and have gone out of their way to say, hey, schedule breaks or take your PTO. Whereas prior to it was like, what do you mean you're sick? Come into the office, So there was like that world where it was, you're exactly right. It was, okay, you're remote. I expect you to work longer hours, or I expect you to be there when I call you, or cloud computing and, SharePoint, Power Apps, and all these things. They put our work on our phones, for better or for worse. So for some of us, that meant, yay, I can, work remote. I can be wherever, and I can still get my workloads, my mission, and it'll be accomplished. But for others, that meant you're never not working. And so sometimes that was a bad thing. So post-COVID, you've seen people take, I guess, be more aware of people's mental health and work hours. And because for a while there, it was like you didn't call people in the 6 o'clock hour, right? I was listening to a podcast not too long ago that was like, the dinner hour. It's odd to receive a call during the dinner hour, but like, what is the dinner hour anymore? That those kind of lines have been kind of blurred there a little bit. So our I guess that kind of leads into the putting things into your pocket, right? So have you seen any pushback from like organizations when because I guess the what I'm getting at is like organizations are trying to get people back, some of them. And so is some of that pushback because of the productivity, or what are the trends are you seeing any trends in that as to why, what are the key reasons why organizations might want to bring people back with things like Power Apps, Power BI, Teams, all these tools that we have to enable remote in those types of business environments?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the main reasons for wanting to go back into the office that I personally heard or seen out there in reports is all about I guess culture and connection, right? I mean, I'm used to working remotely and then meeting with people, but I do have to say I just came back from a team offsite meeting where I got to meet everyone that I've been working with for the past 2 years and seeing in these tiny boxes in person for the first time. And although I would never want to go back, to a 5-day, in office every day work week, that touch point of being able to actually talk with someone in person is you have way more of a connection than talking, through a Teams meeting or whatever, because you have those side conversations. You might, go out to dinner or something or lunch, and you have those over lunch kind of conversations in addition to your normal meeting times where you learn a lot about the person and you have a lot of creative ideas. So to me, that's like the biggest factor of maybe, even having some kind of hybrid thing of going into the office once a month, once a quarter, is for that really personal connection piece.
And so how can you combat that? Like, I know that not all organizations even have an office anymore post-COVID, right? And so building a work culture, and it gets difficult. I know it's not impossible, and I've done a bunch of different podcasts on building remote culture, but what are some of the ways that we can combat that using like Microsoft tools?
Yeah, let's say, I mean, technology obviously has a key play in that. And I think the way that we using things like, Teams, obviously, beyond just the scope of meetings, and having interactive, some of the in-meeting applications for Teams where you can ask leading questions, and some of the polling. I think that's one thing that I notice with virtual meetings, right, is some people might feel like they don't have a chance to speak up, right? So just making sure people are aware and having practices for your meetings to raise your hand and use the virtual raise a hand so that everyone gets a say and is able to speak up. And then some of the polling features that we have with Microsoft Forms and things like that to really increase the interaction and engagement that we're already having in some of these virtual meetings.
Yeah, I love Teams, which the what is it, the Gartner, who does the 4 quadrants things?
Gartner.
Yeah. They have Teams ranked, if it's not the highest, it's one of the highest out there. It's a great platform, which has been around pre-COVID, and I guess it just kind of built up a lot of steam post-COVID for obvious reasons. You started to see the NFL draft did it, and some of the other sports organizations did their drafts via, which was pretty cool to see. But I'm glad you brought up the hand raising, because that's something that I have always done, and it was kind of scoffed at for because everybody's in the office and they're like, oh, hey, so and so, it looks like they're raising their hand. But anyone who's now been on which we all have, been on a virtual meeting where everybody's in their boxes, talking over each other is the death of a meeting, right? So what are some of, like, so you mentioned the hand raise. Are there any other things that you use when you're doing your types of remote meetings that you find that are beneficial just for meeting flow?
Yeah, definitely the hand raise. Again, it's like I know I often struggle with, not wanting to interrupt people or knowing what I might place. So that personally for me has been really invaluable. But then also the reaction. So if I'm just trying to get general feedback, if I'm talking about something, it's like, what does everyone think of this idea? Maybe I don't have to like call everyone out to actually talk and give me feedback, but just like give me a thumbs up if you think this is a good idea, or a thumbs or something like that. I think that those reactions that we have is really valuable, as long with the polling too, because a lot of people might not want to speak up or really say something, but they can answer a quick poll just to get that instantaneous feedback.
Yeah, through like Microsoft Forms integrates directly into Teams, right?
Which I use that a lot.
I love Microsoft Forms. At first, I didn't know really what to think of it. So, like you, I come from the SharePoint world, and so the SharePoint to me was, you had lists and you had forms and libraries, and I always used the lists and the forms as a way to, build up and build apps, right? Which is the way that it has evolved, but. So I was like very protective over my lists and my forms, and Microsoft came out with Microsoft Forms, which is a very easy way to build a form. And at first I was like, oh no, they're stripping away SharePoint. What are they doing? They're bringing forms over here, lists are over here now. Everything is its own app. But enter Power Platform, and it's actually made things so much easier and so much more to manage, where we use Microsoft Forms for external members as well. We'll use it as like QA forms, bringing it outside of meetings, and you can allow external members to fill these out. So if you're on a meeting with, a partner company or a client or something like that, you drop a form in there, they can fill it out, and then you can run Power Automate flows to your lists and populate it. It's like it opened up like a whole nother world, which is really cool. So I'm glad you brought up forms. And so this is a technical question, this is for me now. When would you decide to use a form or a power app? Do you have like a theory or a flow, or to say, this should be a SharePoint list form, this should be a Microsoft form, this should be a power app?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you already touched on one of the big first questions that I asked when trying to decide, and that is the audience. Like, is this for people like outside of my company, or is it for like internal company use? So that's the first question I asked, because as we know, model-driven Canvas applications are really meant for, in your 80 tenants, kind of like inter-company use. Of course, we have Power Pages now as well, which is that kind of like public-facing website. But to me, that's more of a, like a big scale thing, and not necessarily just for a simple intake form. So if the audience is external, I'll kind of default to forms, but then also like complexity of the form and what you need to do. If it is just a simple sign-up form or maybe a questionnaire, that's kind of what Microsoft Forms is geared towards. But if it's a complex form where you need to see, like maybe embedded dashboards, reporting, and see like lists and filterable galleries of information and things like that, that's obviously clear Power Apps choice there. So it's really just complexity and audience.
Yeah. I follow that pretty similar as well. Complexity is, which there's so many things in Microsoft Forms now that used to require code or used to require lookup fields or like all kinds of different tools, InfoPath being one of the fun ones back in the day. And now it's as simple as like next question in Microsoft Forms. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many headaches spent over just that, those types of things that are really cool to see out of Microsoft Forms. And then SharePoint lists being pulled out as lists. Is there an end game to that? Is that just for ease of use, or is there something that we're going to see maybe down the line for Power Platform out of that? Or can you give me a peek behind the curtain on that?
Yeah, I think ultimately it is for ease of use and ease of integration. So, without having that app on your phone to be able to pull up lists, and then even taking it beyond the scope of, SharePoint traditionally and lists and all that, we're very business focused. So, with Microsoft Lists, I think you're kind of seeing a shift toward, obviously using it for the business scenarios, but even like personal scenarios as well. If you want to use that to kind of manage, like I actually use Microsoft Lists when I moved to make a moving checklist of things that I needed to do, for example. So there's that whole scope of, kind of evolving to also be able to be kind of like a personal productivity tool to be able to store information and data, but then also the integration side, right? Being able to easily and seamlessly consume those lists in Microsoft Teams, right? So if you're needing to have some kind of data repository to store information and collaborate with that in a team, that Microsoft List app and the integration makes it really seamless.
Yeah. And there's a direct plug-in to Power Apps, right? We have
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So it can really be, like a back end, depending on, what you're doing of your Power Apps applications and all that.
Yeah. I like, that's how I like to explain SharePoint lists is like, it's an easy to manage database. Like you can plug it into Power Apps, you can plug it into Power BI, and you say it a lot better than I do, but you can seamlessly use your, and consume your data. Which gets into back to what you had mentioned a couple minutes ago, was this how you work and where you work and when you work. Now that we are consuming data in so many different ways, and it's so easily done, where creating a Power BI dashboard pre-365 was a difficult thing to do. You had SharePoint, reports, and there was a lot of different ways to do it. And now I feel like it's push button, where you have, or it can be, but there are so many different, it's not always push button, but there's so much more that we can do with our data now, which helps reinforce the remote environments where we can work wherever and we can consume data from wherever. And so that leads to what I believe will be a productivity-based work week, which I know the 4-day work week is a big push. I think California might have already done it. So what are your thoughts on the 4-day work week before we dive any further into it? Like, do you think it's a real possibility?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I in this day and age, I don't see why we don't have, a nationwide 4-day work week. I mean, there's no reason why it shouldn't be possible. But I mean, I think even that is limiting. I think it's just all about flexible work. If someone can get what they need to get done in 3 days, more power to them. But I think the 4-day work week is a good start, down the right path for sure. I mean, and we see some companies trying to slowly push towards that with like meeting-free Fridays or meeting-free Mondays as a way to kind of reclaim that time. And with all this stuff and technology that we have, Power Platform included, to really automate a lot of our jobs too. There's really no reason why we can't condense that down and have a 4-day work week.
Yeah, we do a summer Friday. So between Memorial Day and Labor Day, that we have you're on call in case anything were to happen. Yeah. It's very rare that anything happens on a Friday that, doesn't have to, it can wait, like that can wait till Monday. But we don't have any internal meetings and we don't do anything like that. And it gives people are a lot happier. I feel like the workforce is, have you guys experimented with that at all at Microsoft, or is your team doing? Is that like a team by team basis thing at Microsoft?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a team, especially the like meeting free Fridays is like a team by team type basis. I would love to see us company wide move to a 4-day work week. I mean, I think the U.S. is one of the few companies, or a few states, or countries, if I could speak, that really has a 5-day work week these days. I think a lot have kind of shifted to 4-day work week. So, definitely team by team. I've experimented with the meeting-free Fridays. It works pretty well. But yeah, I think across the board, if we could just shift that to a complete 4-day work week, a lot of people would be happier. I mean, everything that I've seen, people are much happier when they have that extra downtime and can compartmentalize their work and not have to worry about spreading it all out in a 5-day work week.
Yeah, change is a hard thing for people. There's a really good book that I have, and I don't know where it is now. I went to look for it, and it's not there. But here it is. Change. It's called Change Monster by Jeannie Daniel Duck, and it's all about this change monster that people are afraid of, when really implementation is an emotional thing more so than technology. Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Virtual Agent, name Power Platform application. It's going to help your organization, and you're going to be more productive, and you're going to have data wherever you want it. And it's not necessarily the implementation of the tech that's the hard part. It's the getting everybody else. It's dealing with the human emotion about this. And that's how I look at the workforce too, is that, look, you can work 4 days a week. I think that we are eventually going to see a 0-day work week where you have this set of requirements. We run DevOps, and so DevOps is really just, hey, you have 2 weeks to run. You have your 2-week sprint, and if you get it done, you get it done, and that's what it is. It's you have your deliverables, and it's all deliverable based. And when things come in, you're communicating with your teams and everything like that around specific items, less of, hey, when'd you clock in, when are you clocking out, kind of a thing. And the Power Platform helps us do that. We have all of our internal things built on Power Apps, and we watch all your YouTube videos, and so we make sure that we're doing them the April Dunham way. But how far can we take that? Is a 0-day work week possible?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I guess too, like on my team here, we kind of have a concept of that. It's just all about we have our commitments, we have our work to do, and like what you were saying, if you have a 2-week sprint and this is what you need to get done, you get it done in time. Then how you spend the rest of your time is up to you. So if I want to spend that learning and catching up on technology, or just taking a little bit of downtime, I mean, I think we can definitely move to having the freedom to do things like that and be able to, just work when you want to work, and then making sure that you get your work done. And that's really all that matters, ultimately. And I guess certain industries, though, that's easier said than done. There's might be some where it's harder to shift to that model. Obviously, in the tech industry, it's fairly easy, but in some where you still kind of have to clock in, clock out, and all that might be a little bit tougher to get there.
Yeah, there are certain industries where some of these things that we're talking about are more applicable. Tech, obviously. I believe it's like the thought leader industry, I think is what Microsoft calls it, or they call it something where it's essentially, if you think for a living, then you're a lot easier to be more adapted to the remote, like architects or engineers, techs, developers, designers, those types of, whereas you and I could be in the same room, April, and we never talk all day, especially in the development worlds, right? Developers, we're very much put some headphones on and sit there in the dark kind of people. So it's not really a break in a different way of doing things to work remotely, whereas maybe like some of the trades, it gets a little harder, but you could still just never have that central point. You don't have to go to the office to wait for your next ticket. There are applications that can do that, So with the Power Platform, and so I'm going to, I did give you a little bit of heads up on what we were going to be talking about, which you've done it masterfully, and I kind of left the last bit open a little bit, where I was saying, how can the Power Platform help people, work wherever, and how can we further this conversation to say, okay, somebody listening is like, I want to do this. I want to go on vacation. I want to just work from my backyard. What are some ways that the Power Platform can enable organizations to take that first step?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle here. I mean, you mentioned Power BI earlier. I think that's a core component that can really help us in our, working from home kind of journey here and moving more towards that, because it's important to understand where are we spending our time, and kind of have the analytics back it up and figure out where we need to shift and what's taking up a lot of our time. Like I just got back a little bit ago from Scottish Summit, and I attended an interesting session from one of our community members, Lindsay Shelton, and she was kind of talking about how we can take our Outlook event information. We can use categories to say, okay, this is like a training type thing, or this is a team meeting, whatever, and use those categories and report off of that in Power BI to really see where you're spending a lot of your time. Like maybe I'm spending too much time in meetings that I'm only on the CC line, like I don't really need to be involved in that meeting, and really getting those deeper insights to see how to prioritize your time so that we can move towards, say, a 4-day or even 0-day work week by figuring out where to best utilize our time. So that's one really important aspect. And another thing, big part of that is like Viva Insights, not necessarily Power Platform, but it uses Power BI to kind of get some of those analytics as well. And then Power Automate. I mean, you can't talk about working from home without talking about Power Automate and how we can automate some of our tasks. And I think it's important to say it's not just the business things that we want to automate. It could be the personal side of it. Because like if we're working from home, and if you haven't worked from home before, you have kids, they're noisy. You have like a spouse, and they might just barge into your room at any time. So that's been one of my most helpful things for working from home, is using Power Automate to have a simple light outside my door, to say, I'm in a meeting, don't come in here, right? And so it reads my calendar and automatically does that. So there's personal things that can make your work from home life easier that the Power Platform can help with, but then the business side, like being able to quickly set up a meeting. Like I use the Teams integration for Power Automate all the time, where I can do a message extension and just click a button and say, if someone messages me, like schedule a meeting with this person, right? And just
I love that video that you've posted around the light that you have that reads your calendar. It's like when the meeting starts, it sends it's an HTTPS push, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was going through your channel because we do watch your channel, and
well, thanks.
A lot, actually. And when that one came up, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. Like it's such a game breaker, because you sometimes I do have a door on my office, but I don't always lock it. If I get up and go get a drink of water or something like that. Because I do have kids. I have 4 of them. They've been pretty good during this recording, but they're not always. And if I'm on a call with, and insert anybody, there's a pretty high probability. I loved that video. So what did you think of that? Was that just like, were you just like exploring it out, or was it like a test project, or?
Well, so the Power Automate integration I thought of, but the actual idea of like having some kind of light outside, I think it was a Scott Hanselman blog post from like ages ago, actually, where he was kind of showing like he had some kind of string light outside his door. So I was just thinking, and I don't remember what he was using. He wasn't using the Power Platform to do the automation. But I thought, man, I could use Power Automate for this. I could read my calendar. And then so I took it as, a different way, and I found this on-air sign, which I really liked. So just plug that into a smart plug, because I was super into the smart home automation stuff to begin with. So this was just another reason to go down that path. And then I read that from Power Automate with an HTTP action, and just, tried it out, and it happened to work. It's pretty cool.
I'm looking over on my bookcase right now, because I brought my smart plug over here to do that. I haven't made it all the way through because you used a different smart plug than I did, so I had to. I've been having to do some research about how to communicate with my smart plug. But that was like totally like an eye opener for me. Was look, you can do more with Power Automate than just sending emails. Right there, there's more than just the push notification which is where our minds go for how to communicate and how to convey what Power Automate can do. But there's so much that it can do, including talking with smart home devices. You could dim the lights. You could walk into a meeting and say, hey Cortana, you join the meeting, and it dials into the Teams meeting and puts the blinds down and dims the lights and turns on your Surface Hub, and you're off and running. And I think that's kind of the future of Power Platform, even though it's kind of already here. But getting that idea across to organizations, that's like, look, like this is more than an email or a push notification,
Exactly. And that's the reason why I did that video. I think, just as you explained, a lot of people think of the businessy side, sending the emails, and not the other side of the story. And like a while back too, I did an integration with an Alexa skill to be able to call and read back my tasks and stuff like that, just to show like this is possible for like personal use beyond the typical use cases that we think of when we think Power Automate.
Right. Like, get creative. Look what I can do. Now take this and run with it. A lot of your videos are like, this is how you do this. But I get the sense that the videos that you have been doing are to get people thinking more so than a specific thing. It's more, and I feel like that's what advocacy really is right? Is here's an example of something that's really cool and take it and run with it.
Exactly. I mean, there's just not enough people in the day to just do a tutorial on the step-by-step complete on, how to do everything. It's more, spreading awareness and then getting people excited about something so that they want to explore. Well, if she can automate a light outside her door with this, what else can I do with it? Can I integrate with IoT devices, to get your mind thinking of all the other possibilities, and you take it from there. And I love hearing the stories of oh, you did this video on X, look what I did as a result of this, that stuff I wouldn't have even thought of.
Yeah. So to that point, you did a room booking app.
Oh yeah.
I believe. Yeah. So our company, we do business with the federal government, and I won't name what agency it is, but we were in a meeting and we were talking about ways that we're going to build out the Power Apps, because in the federal government there is a shortage of seats and desks that you can sit at, and so we were tasked to build a hoteling application. So I had actually built it previous to COVID, when people were going into the office and we had remote days, certain days, and you had to book a seat because there was more employees than there were seats. And so post COVID, we were coming back and we were looking to ways to enhance this. And somebody brought up, they're like, has anyone looked at Lauren Dunham's Power App to see if we could utilize that? And I was like, absolutely. Actually, I have. Yeah. So a version of that app that you have, I think it's a conference room scheduler app, I believe is what it is.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
That is powering somewhere in the federal government right now of where they sit. So
well, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, your stuff is really great. And that's the kind of stuff that members should be looking at if you guys are looking for a playbook of how to do something, then, that's one thing. But if you're looking for how can we just try new things and learn new ideas, that's what really I feel like April and a lot of members in the community do really, really, really well, is you'll show something and you take that and run with it. And I love the free resources that you put out there with the apps and everything like that. And we're big fans over here of April Dunham. So.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, nothing like an awkward goodbye like that, right? We're just gonna
making me blush.
Right. Well, April, thanks for coming on again. This is I always have fun nerding out with you. So it is one of I've been looking forward to this conversation for since we finished the first one, to be honest with you, and I really appreciate it. And is there anything that you want to plug? I'm glad you brought up Microsoft Viva, because that was actually going to be one of my questions. But yeah, if you guys haven't checked out Viva, make sure you guys go do that. But is there anything you want to plug before we put a bow on this?
Oh gosh, no, that I didn't think of. I would just say explore the Power Platform, and then also Viva Forms. All of those tools are going to help you, be able to work from home and do this remote work stuff even more efficiently, and just get inspired. Look at some of the stuff the community produces and what they're doing with the tools, and see how you can make that happen for you in your work from home journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, April. Very much appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, guys, there goes April Dunham again, back-to-back guests. She was on the previous podcast, and now she's graced our presence again. So that was an awesome conversation. Make sure you guys are checking out her stuff on YouTube. Type in April Dunham in YouTube and check out all of her videos, so you can reference all the cool stuff that she's doing over there and all the stuff that we were just talking about. Also, go to YouTube and look at Capital Presence, capital with an O. You can check out all of our old YouTubes there. We're also on Spotify, iTunes, and then you can go to goworkwherever.com to listen to all previous episodes, check out some of our free resources, and see some of the Power Apps that we've been building. So, guys, thanks for hanging out. Until next time, see you.